Great. So we are recording, and hello again, everyone. Now it's official because we are on the recording. Very excited, delighted, and thrilled for this conversation today with a special, beautiful guest. Her name is Sarah Erica, and she's going to share her very inspiring. It's beyond inspiring. It's just it's such a story of bravery also. And it really is. It's this journey of healing is the journey of the braves and those that choose to step out of the mainstream channels of medicine. Those are really the brave ones. So like Pamela that is here, she's also a brave one that has decided to take her health in her hands and become her own healer, or just be the healer that we already are. So Sarah is going to share her story, and both her and I are going to dive into the power of cellular regeneration, what we are actually capable of. We're going to dive into the topics of solitude vacation because that's a main pillar in Sarah's story and what brought her back to, not even brought her back to health, it literally saved her freaking life. And so we'll talk about the juices, we'll talk about some other things like fasting that Sarah is getting more into these days as well. And beyond just the technical and the practical things that we're going to talk about, like the juicing and the fasting and the emotional healing and everything that comes with it. But we also we're going to share about the power that lives within us and that we are the magic, like Sarah describes it. And so just to introduce Sarah, I'm going to read to you a summary of her bio and her story, and then we'll dive into it. So Sarah had been diagnosed with over a dozen health conditions, and I do want to say that she was in her 20s. So we're talking about a very young pup in her early 20s that was already diagnosed with major health conditions that doctors claimed were chronic, progressive, and incurable. And Sarah completely healed herself during the course of a year-long juice fast. So that means 365 days of drinking nothing but freshly made juices. And based on medical establishment, she should have been dead after the first week. So Sarah did not die, but she went from being in a wheelchair as a young 20-year-old, having a feeding tube, I'm getting chills, being in organ failure and being told that she wasn't going to live. From that condition, she went to running across the finish line of a 5K marathon on day 366 of her juice feasting. Woo! Again, I'm getting the chills. She is now absolutely thriving, not dead, traveling, exploring, and adventuring, and living out her life's purpose of letting others know that healing happens. Not that it's only possible, but it happens. Anything is possible, and that they are the magic. Boom. So what else can we say about that? So it's just, I just love it. I love that story. It's such a story of victory and bravery. That really is, and we are all capable of that to some extent, whatever it is that we are experiencing in our lives. So I just want to welcome Susie. Yes, thank you for joining us, love. And Melissa is here. She's also coming from Maui. Aloha, Melissa. And Susie is coming from the Big Island. So we've got the islands here representing. Sarah also has some experience being on the Big Island and the connection to Hawaii. So wonderful to have you here, ladies. And now, without further ado, I am going to bring Sarah to the stage, to the seat, and allow her to share more about her story uh, and where she is now. So Sarah, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us at 7 a.m. I also want to say that it's 7 a.m. for Sarah, and she was gracious enough to say yes, so we can actually have some of you US people alongside with Bali time and Israel 7 a.m. So thank you, dear one, and welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for your kind words. I'm so honored to be here, and I'm so excited for our conversation this morning.
So Sarah, dear one, would love for you to, after the introduction and what I shared from what you gave me, if you could please share from your words and your experience the story of what exactly occurred in your health, your age at that time, and what drove you, what motivated you to actually take things into your own hands and embark on a year-long juice feast.
Of course. So I had had strange symptoms my whole life growing up, and these were things that I actually thought were normal because they didn't seem weird enough to ask anybody about. For example, I would wake up in the morning and I would not be able to eat breakfast. I would just feel so full that the thought of food would literally make me vomit. I remember my mom was very big into vitamins and supplements and things like that. And we would have like a stack of pills in front of us every morning, all natural things. And the thought, like looking at them and the thought of having to take something to take them down with, I couldn't do it. I would actually physically, my body would physically reject these pills every morning. They would come, they would go down, they would come right back up. It wasn't a fun situation. I got in a lot of trouble for that. My mom just thought I didn't want to take them. I remember I would get dizzy upon standing as a kid, and I thought everybody did because I didn't have a frame of reference. That was just my whole life. So small little things like that, my whole life. And then when I was 20 years old, I moved to Israel and I joined the Israeli army. And on the draft day, every person is given vaccines. It's not something that you can choose to accept or not to accept. It's just the way that it is. And at that point, I was not very aware. I really, truly, at that point, believed in the religion of science and Western medicine, because I do think it's turned into a religion. I was very much a member, and I blindly accepted whatever I was told. I trusted, I had blind faith in this religion. And I got, I believe, 3 or 4 shots in one day. And not too long after that, I started vomiting uncontrollably. It started off with a period of like a week out of the month where I just couldn't keep anything down. Then it was 2 weeks out of the month. And then it was just, I couldn't keep anything down ever at all. And I was in the army at this time. And being in the army and being sick do not go hand in hand. I remember I was fighting to go to doctors and to see specialists. At one point, I had to throw up on my commander's shoes in order for her to believe me. That was not a fun situation. But finally, I got to all these different specialists and I was tested. I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's. And during my army service, I was also diagnosed with gastroparesis, and which is a paralyzed stomach for those who are not aware. And I ended up being medically discharged a month before my 2 full years of service were complete. So I served 1 year, 11 months. And my medical discharge was because I had lost 40% of my body weight in 7 months. I couldn't hold anything down. Nothing was working. They had me drinking feeding tube formula to try and get some weight on me. Nothing was working. So I left Israel, went back to the States for medical treatment, thinking I'd be there for a little bit. I would be taken care of. I could get back to my life in Israel. And I ended up with a gastroenterologist who said that this is not normal for a girl in her young 20s. At this point, I was 23, to have gastroparesis this severe. We have to get you tested for other things. I'm seeing like a rise in dysautonomia with young women your age with gastroparesis. And I was tested for dysautonomia and I was diagnosed with several forms. I was diagnosed with other stomach conditions or other gastroenterological conditions. So my intestines, we found out that they didn't work pretty much at all. I had Raynaud's, I had Hashimoto's was still out there and thriving. It was pushing back hard. We found out later that I had heavy metal toxicity, so many different conditions. And I was officially diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which they say is a genetic connective tissue disorder. And they said that's what explained all the other conditions. And because this was a genetic condition causing everything else, it meant that I was not going to get better and it was only going to get worse and it was going to kill me. I remember I was doing a lot of research at the time with as much brain power as I could. And a lot of the time I was pretty much in bed or on the couch. There was one point during my story where I was losing so much weight that the doctors only allowed me to move from my bed to the couch. That's all I was allowed to do. But I was doing all this research with as much brain power as I had for alternative therapies and alternative treatments. And my mom and I flew to a specialist in Texas. And I had had doctors all over the United States at that point. I saw people at the Mayo Clinic, at the Cleveland Clinic. I had a specialist in North Carolina, in Texas, and I was from Georgia. So it was a lot of traveling to see all these specialists. My mom would come with me at every appointment because I was not healthy enough to take care of myself. And I walk into the specialist office. He's one of the top neurogastroenterological doctors in the country. And I hand him my stack of research and I said, what can we try from this? And he looks at me and he goes, you need to wrap your pretty little head around the fact that you're not going to get better. And then he proceeded to tell me how he expected I was going to die. He said that I had a feeding tube and I would continue to need that until my intestines shut down entirely, which he expected that they would sooner rather than later based on the way that I was progressing. And then from there, I would need a central line to my heart to feed me. But because of all my conditions, I was such a high risk for infection that that line would get infected and it would probably kill me. And he expected this to happen within the next few years. And he just said it so matter of fact, like it was just, this is the way it's going to be. Just get that through your head and deal with it. Right now, it's about symptom management. It's about making you as comfortable as possible. I was devastated. I left that appointment bawling, absolutely sobbing. My mom looks at me and she goes, why are you crying? I was like, hold on, Mom, what do you mean, why am I crying? Did you not just hear what this doctor said to me? And she goes, yeah, but when have you ever listened to somebody just because they told you something? And I was like, Mom, I don't like this picture that you're painting of me, but also you're right. So because of that doctor, thanks to that doctor, and thanks to my mom in this particular moment, everything shifted. I was no longer willing to accept what somebody told me just because they said so. My mom reminded me of who I am, and I'm a fighter. I like to question. There's a reason that I don't do so well with authority. No, I was fine in the army and things like that, but I like to know why. And this doctor was just telling me this is the way it's going to be. Well, says who? Says who? He doesn't have a magic 8 ball. He doesn't like know the future, right? So I started doing some digging, started doing some research. And around the same time, I was seeing a geneticist for the Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is the genetic connective tissue disorder that I was diagnosed with. And thank God that I saw this particular geneticist because she was very much into the holistic world, as well as being a Western medicine practicing doctor. And she recommended that I was her most severe patient, is what she told me. And she recommended that for me, that I do a specific protocol, specifically that's typically done with cancer patients. It's a lot of juices, a lot of enemas, and a very, very specific diet, and a special soup as well. I couldn't do the diet because I wasn't able to tolerate solid food. I wasn't able to hold down solid food for 6 years. My body just completely rejected it at all times. The soup was absolutely disgusting. So I was not about to put that in my body. I tried it, couldn't do it. And I was not at a place where I was mentally ready to consider enemas yet. But I tried the juices and I loved the juices. They were absolutely delicious. So I started researching juicing, and like any good researcher in the modern age, I went to Instagram to look up stories of juicing. And I came across someone who juiced for 90 days to heal himself, and it worked. So I thought to myself, okay, if he can do 90 days, I wonder what I can do in 100. So I started out my juice fast with the intention of going 100 days to see what I could do, how far I could take it, what I could heal. And towards the end of the 100 days, I realized I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready to stop. I have so much more that I want to do. I have so much more healing to do. And I decided to commit to a full year. And of course, the year that I chose was a leap year. So I ended up doing 366 days of just homemade juice. And I went from being in a wheelchair and having a feeding tube and being told that I was going to die to running across the finish line of a 5K, getting rid of all my mobility aids, pulling out my own feeding tube, and absolutely thriving.
And come on, everybody, let's clap here. Oh my God. Sarah, and it brought tears to my eyes hearing you share the story. And first of all, how delighted I am, and your mom is such an angel.
She really is.
Yes, that she gave you that nudge, and here you are now. And the other reason why I felt emotional hearing your story is because I speak to people on a regular basis, and I hear these stories of being told so many lies and suffering as a result, where in reality it's so simple. Mm. And of course, there's perfection in everything, and we all choose our own journey, just like you chose that journey. So I do believe in that wholeheartedly, in the perfection of the Creator and each soul on their own journey. And simultaneously, it does. It's sad. It's infuriating, really, after hearing so many people and so many stories of so much agony, unnecessary, and that basically you were giving a death sentence that couldn't be further away from the truth.
Right.
So that's one of the reasons why I'm here and why Sarah is here. And Sarah, I would love to know and for you to share. Wow, I mean, there's so many. And please write in the comments as well, dear friends that are here. Susie saying woo-hoo, and Pamela saying amazing. Melissa saying, wow, so inspiring. What a goddess of a mother you have, for sure. For sure. Well, and Sarah came from her, so that's so yeah, if you have questions, particular questions here, please write it in the comments, because of course I've got a lot. I'm curious to hear, Sarah, in the period of that 1 year, because your body was to such a dysfunctional stage, right? Mm-hmm. How was that journey of that 1 year? Did you experience a lot of healing crises? Did you continue to shed more weight? Did you experience severe symptoms that got you scared or fearful or doubtful? Because I know the process of detoxification and the healing crises can be quite intense. So I would love for you to share a little bit about the shadowy, you can say, or the uncomfortable part of the journey, not just the rainbows and butterflies that we are seeing now, but that part, and what kept you going when it felt like you might die next week, or things were getting worse instead of better.
Yeah, for sure. So thank God my healing crises were less physical and more emotional. I'm a big believer that the body is the subconscious mind. And I think a big reason why I experienced everything I experienced on a physical plane was because that I was not addressing my emotional self. There were things that I refused to deal with for 20 plus years, from young childhood, that were all of a sudden, you know what they say, raw food, raw emotions. And here I was on just juices. All these things were all of a sudden coming up, and I didn't have anywhere to put them. I couldn't push them down anymore with food. I didn't have food to push them down with. So they were coming up and out, and I just had to have it happen. And it was scary and it was intense. I remember around day 200, I was ready to quit. I was ready to give up. For a period of about 20 days, I was ready to just throw in the towel, go back to being sick because it was easier. It was familiar. It was easier. I was ready to throw it all in and say, I would rather die, literally rather die than keep going. Thank God, didn't end up quitting, kept going. But it was to the point where the emotional detox was so intense. The physical stuff I could handle because I'd been in physical pain for years already. So that was nothing new. So if I had an ache or a pain, or if my stomach was doing weird, funny things, that was already my normal. So to me, it didn't feel anything extra. It didn't feel like a detox. It was the emotional that really, really got me. And the forcing myself to address the things that I hadn't addressed in 20 plus years, that was where the real healing crises were for me. And it was not a pretty journey. I was not a fun person to be around for a lot of that year. And for a lot of that year, I was also the most incredible person to be around. I was just so full of love and joy and excitement. But when things got bad in my brain, things got bad. And it had to happen that way because it did happen that way. And I believe everything is always perfection, as you were saying. There's perfection in everything. And sometimes we need to, actually more than sometimes, you need to feel it to heal it. So I was feeling all the things that I refused to feel for over 20 years to be able to finally heal them. So that's for me where the biggest healing crises was on the emotional plane and on the internal plane. So physical healing crises, there were aches and there were pains and there were days where I felt like I was backsliding. I was able to, at one point around the halfway mark of my year-long juice fast, I was able to walk a 5K. That was actually how I celebrated the halfway point. Day 186, I believe. Day 183, I did a 5K walk to celebrate how far I had come, which was incredible because before the juice fast at all, I couldn't walk from my front door to my mailbox without passing out. And here I was, not even a full year in, walking a 5K to celebrate. And then after that, for a little bit, I couldn't walk that far again and I got scared. But the physical stuff, I was just reminding myself that, hey, healing isn't always linear. And I've had good pains before and I've had setbacks before, but every time I keep moving forward, I'm okay. It was the mental that really got to me. That was for me where the really scary part of the juice fasting and the juice feasting was.
I'm thrilled that you brought that up. I'm so thrilled that you brought that up, that it's the emotional component that I would say across the board is, for the majority of people, that's the most difficult piece. That's the most challenging part, is actually really getting in touch and feeling, like you said, feeling those things that haven't been felt maybe ever. And depending on the person, right? If there's some trauma, if there's things that have been locked on a cellular level, it's all going to come up to the surface. And that's really, like you're saying, many people are okay enduring physical pain, but are much more scared or uncomfortable with actually feeling the emotional pain. And also, ultimately, it's facing one own self.
Right. We know that physical pain ends. Emotional pain, though, when we're going through it, it feels like it never will. So it's one of those things that most people would rather take the physical, because while it can hurt a lot in the moment, we know that moment will pass. With emotional pain, while we're in it, it's really hard to know and to believe and to trust and have that faith that this too shall pass. And not only that it will pass, but it's happening for a reason, and that reason is for our highest and greatest good.
Amen. And Sarah, I'm curious, when you had that period, which you said it was 20 days or so, basically 3 weeks, around that 200-day mark, that you felt extremely challenged emotionally and mentally, and that you had serious thoughts about discontinuing, what kept you going?
Honestly, my mom. I knew that It's because of my mom that I healed. If my mom hadn't said those words to me outside of that doctor's office, I would have just accepted my situation and I probably would be dead by now. But my mom reminded me of who I am, and I couldn't let her down. I was okay in that moment. I was okay with letting myself down. I was okay with it. I was ready to accept letting myself down, but I was not ready to let my mom down. I was not ready to cause her heartbreak, knowing that this was the thing, because I knew on some level, there was a physical knowing in my body that this is what I needed to do in order to heal. Not necessarily that it was the juices that I needed, but this was the journey that I needed to take. And I knew that this was where the healing was going to be found for me. And I knew that if I didn't do this now, I never would do it. If I gave up on myself, I'd be giving up on myself entirely for good, and that was it. And I was not ready to do that to my mom. After everything she had done for me, I couldn't quit. It's because of her.
Yeah. Wow. We got to bring your mom to do an interview too for the two of you. Have you done any interviews with your mom? The two of you
No,
together?
I haven't, but I would love to.
Yes. Is your mama in the States now?
She is.
Oh, okay. In Atlanta.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, let's do something for sure.
I would love that.
Yes. Okay. Who you can say in the comments, who would like to meet that angel? Oh my God. And did she start really and I'm curious, Sarah, did she start juicing with you along that year? I would guess yes, but to what extent?
She actually didn't. I would make extra juice for my family to see if they wanted to try, and nobody was interested whatsoever. And that's totally fine. That's totally valid. Everyone on their own path. They loved what the juices were doing for me. They were just not interested in the combinations I was making. And I offered to make other things, but they were like, this is like a you journey, not an us journey, but we're happy to support you on your you journey. But my mom did. My mom has always been into the health and holistic world. She was the one who was in my childhood always giving us the vitamins and things like that. And she actually, this might be a little TMI, but when we were kids, she actually sent off our urine to be tested to see what we were missing in our diets to get us the specific things that she was always into that world, right? And through my story, and she started researching environmental toxins as well, because I was not living in the best place while I was in the Army. And with the heavy metal toxicity from the shots, and also I was diagnosed with mercury toxicity, and also antimony toxicity, and that's from fire retardants and things like that. And that's what antimony is found in, and all the uniforms that we wore in the Army were fire retardant, and the mattresses and things like that. So my mom started doing a lot of research about chemicals and what was in them and how they affect our bodies. And she actually started working with Norwex, a cleaning company that uses no toxins whatsoever in their products. They don't use any of the things that are banned. They're over, I think, 600 something chemicals banned by the EU. Norwex uses less, it uses nothing that's banned by the EU, and also bans additional things from their products. Basically, it's cleaning with cloth and water. And it's microfiber so small that it actually works. And she says, because of me and my journey, that's how she got involved with them. And that's how she's carrying out her aspect of making a healthier world by helping people remove toxins from their home. So she wasn't into the juicing aspect, but she's into the removing toxins aspect.
Oh, yes. Yes. Oh, again, so appreciate that you brought that one up, because it's essential to have that understanding that it's not just what we ingest, but I mean, it is, because we breathe air. That's actually the first and primary way of how we nourish ourselves. Like there's an overemphasis in these arenas sometimes on just the food, and it's not about the food really. It's about cleaning the environment, that the body becomes energy efficient, cleaning the internal environment so the body becomes energy efficient. And then it heals and regenerates itself automatically and is actually able to sustain itself on very little. It's not about what we put in, it's about opening up the elimination channels, get all the junk out, and then to not be exposed to any additional junk, which what Sarah is talking about is around all the time. And I speak, there's some clients that I work with that I tell them, if your health is your priority, you actually got to move, because their level of toxicity in the body, and it's people that have also had experience with a lot of pharmaceuticals, with radiation, with chemo, with vaccinations. And so the toxicity load in the body is so immense. And then on a continuous basis, that person is ingesting through the air, through their skin, other toxins. It all stays at home and creates havoc in the body and makes things even worse. And then we look at the fact that those are neurotoxins. They affect the nerves, they affect the nervous system. And when your nervous system is not strong, your health will continue to decline no matter how many juices you drink every day. You know, it's so I'm really, really happy that you brought that one up, Sarah. And Pamela, I got your questions. I'm gonna bring it in a few moments. What I wanted to ask you, Sarah, when you were into the juicing, did you just do juice, or did you know anything about fasting back then? Did you know anything about herbs, or were you just doing juices and nothing else?
So I was just doing juices and nothing else. And I mean, it's interesting that you asked specifically about fasting, because there were some days that I didn't want to drink juice.
Right.
So I didn't. And I was very much, I find it so interesting that I became so in tune with my body that if I didn't want to drink juice that day, I didn't. If I just wanted water, that's what I would drink. And my body was giving me these cues, and I didn't know anything about fasting. I didn't know. I started learning during this year. My mind this year like opened my mind to so many different wonderful, incredible, beautiful, amazing things that I had no idea about before. But it was from this natural, it was a natural progression based on what my body was asking for. So if there was a day where I didn't want juice, I didn't force myself. It was just, oh, my body doesn't want juice. Okay, my body knows better than I do. It's here to protect me. It's here to keep my soul here on this plane. Let me listen to what it needs. And if it needed a break, I gave it a break. And I then learned that, oh, fasting is a thing. People do this to give themselves a break, and it's natural and it's healthy to do this once in a while, or a little bit more than once in a while. So just listen to that inner voice and that inner guidance. And that's actually why I didn't do any herbs, because I never felt called to them. I never felt drawn to them. There was about a period of a week where I tried an herb and I couldn't do it. I couldn't stick with it. I didn't like it. And I realized my body just wasn't drawn to it. And I know people say when juice feasting, a lot of experts say you have to drink your green juices. Oh, the thought of green juice made me want to puke. So why was I going to do that to myself when my body was just asking for fruit? And if I was craving something savory, I made something savory. But I really just went with, what does my body want right now? What does my body feel right now? If I'm trying to heal, I need to trust. I need to know. I realized during this year that every cell in our body has all of the wisdom in the entire universe encased in it, right? And if I want to tap into that, I can't be listening to out here. I need to be listening to in here. This is where the conditions I was diagnosed with don't exist out here. They exist in here. So why am I listening to out here when in here is what's going to heal me? If the problem is internal, then the answer is also internal. Because there is no such thing as a problem. It's just a message. So if the message is coming from within, then the answer is also within. It's just about breaking through and decoding that message. So I really didn't do things the traditional way or the proper way, which is story of my life. I don't like to go strictly by the book. I like to go with what's inside. And I think that's so important. I think at the end of the day, we are our own healers and we know what we need. It's just about tapping into that. And sometimes we need that external voice to remind us that, like, oh yeah, I hear this and this resonates with me, so I should do that, right? But just because one expert says something doesn't mean that that's the right path 100% all the time for everyone. If it resonates, yes. If it doesn't resonate, why do it? And that's how I lived my journey.
Yes, sister. And Pamela is saying amen. And music to my ears, music to my ears. And Pamela can attest to this, that this is what I share always, is because I bring all these pieces, right? I work with the herbs, I work with fasting, like everything that I've learned along the way, and the juicing, and I bring all of this. And when I share with people, just like you said, Sarah, it's not one size fits all. We have all these tools, and I'm going to share with you things, but ultimately tap inside and ask, yeah, do I want juice today? What juices do I want? And for you, it was the fruit, because your body already knew nothing is wrong with green juices, but your body knew this is what we need right now, because there's particular elements in fruits that we don't get from the greens, and vice versa. Each fruit, each green, each herb also has its own consciousness. And there's something in that energetics, something in that consciousness that right now is going to suit your body more than anything else. So there is, as I say, there's a really clear path when it comes to healing and regeneration. There's a really clear path in terms of what our body is designed to consume and what it designed not to consume. When we talk about the emotions, when we talk about the breath, when you talk about all these things, that there's a very clear path that is going to lead you to healing and regeneration. And within that clear path, you can say it's kind of like a linear line, in a sense, a straight line. Within that line, each person is going to have their own grooves within that lane. So for Sarah sharing now, that was one of her grooves, was to be on juice for a year. And also remember, Sarah is coming from a very, very involved background, health-wise. And so that was her recipe, and her body was gravitated towards the fruit juices. And I really appreciate that you share that, Sarah, to really know there's no experts outside of me, because I did the same thing with the juice feasting. It's like, okay, they tell you to drink all these juices. It's like, I can't drink more than 3 quarts a day, and I just want watermelon juice. And sometimes it's like weeks at a time that all I want is watermelon juice. But then really listening and to see how those things change as well along the way. And so for you, Sarah, would you say the year was mainly fruit juices, or did you have some times that you did want some green juices or things other than fruits?
I would say 95% of the year was fruit juices.
Mm-hmm.
And there were times where I wanted other things. I would make a juice with, if I wanted something savory, I'd make a salsa juice, which was absolutely delicious. But I'd always add pineapple to it because I wanted like a sweet salsa.
Yeah.
So there was always an element of sweet to it. Or if there was a juice that I just wanted that was pure savory, it would be one juice out of the 3 or 4 that I had for the day, because I also couldn't drink more than 3 or 4 liters a day. Even though everyone's saying you need to do at least 6, this, that, and the other. I did, but I could, and it worked, right? So again, exactly what you were saying about listening to our bodies, and we are our own experts. But if I wanted some savory juice, I would want one juice, maybe savory, and then the rest sweet. My body really, really wanted that fruit. And I remember I justified it to myself in the beginning when I thought I still had to justify having fruit. I was taking an online course at the time, college biology, and I remember learning that we know that the mitochondria powers the cells, but what powers the mitochondria? ATP. Adenosine triphosphate. Yeah, how is that ATP synthesized in the body? What's the one input that the body needs? Sugar. And one molecule of sugar creates 36 usable molecules of ATP. So in my head, I was justifying all this fruit with, I'm creating all this usable ATP, and that's going to power my mitochondria, which is going to power my cells, which is going to allow me to heal, which, right, it did. But also you don't need justification for fruit, and you never need justification for what your body is asking from you. That's something that I learned along my journey, that if my body's asking for it, there's a reason. I remember I had a surgery, my final surgery during my year-long juice feast. I pulled out my own feeding tube in March, and the hole where the tube wasn't closing properly. So in August of 2020, so a few months later, about 5 months later, I had surgery to correct that, because my intestines started growing outside of my stoma where the feeding tube was. And I know that my body would have healed itself on its own, 100%. I also know that it was doing so much at that time that support that I gave it was the decision that I needed to make in the moment. And thank God I had a surgeon who was willing to work with me, who agreed not to give me full anesthesia and just twilight, who agreed not to give me any pain medication because I didn't want any whatsoever. And I remember going into the surgery with a plan of what I'm going to drink afterwards and what I'm going to drink before to make sure I'm hydrated and feeling good and this, that, and the other. It was like a long list. It was very much from the brain. And then I go into the surgery, and actually it was funny. I was on the operating table right before I was about to go under. The nurse, she looks down at me and she goes, "I remember you. I remember your eyes. I was assisting to put your tube in." And I remembered her eyes. And she was there. She was one of the nurses assisting in the surgery to put my feeding tube in a year prior. And here she was closing up the hole after I pulled it out. It just felt like a full circle moment. It was absolutely beautiful. And I knew it was a sign from the universe that this chapter of my life was over and done with. And I was ready to move on. It felt so special. But anyway, after the surgery, I was looking at my plan of what I was going to consume to make sure that I was hydrated and this, that, and the other. And I wanted none of it. None of it. The only juice that I wanted was pineapple jalapeno juice. That's the only one that I wanted. It was one of my favorites, but I didn't understand why I was only craving that one, right? So I was drinking it, obviously, because that's what I wanted. And then I decided just to do a little research after the fact to figure out why was I craving this so intensely? Because it was not a normal craving. Because normal cravings is like, oh, okay, I understand. This was like, this is the only thing that I can have. And if I do not have this, I will not have anything kind of craving. So I looked it up, and pineapple is anti-inflammatory, which is exactly what the body needs after a surgery. And hot peppers have actually been used as natural pain control for thousands of years. And I had no idea of any of this beforehand. I just knew that that's what I needed. And if I didn't have that, I wasn't having anything. It was the wisdom of the universe coming through my body, telling me what my body needed. It needed to reduce inflammation after a surgery, and it needed pain control because I was not giving myself pain medications. I was not tapping into that world. We always know exactly what we need. Our bodies always know exactly what we need. We just have to interpret the messages, and we just have to be willing to listen.
Brilliant. Brilliant. I love it, Sarah. Oh my goodness. Okay. So I would love to hear, and this relates to part of the question I have here from Pamela. What healing did you experience? So as I assume, or I guess, you didn't just, everything went away after that 1 year. So if you could share a bit about what kind of healing did you actually experience on that day 366, things that you were free of? And then how did you continue after the juice feasting and the healing journey? And where do you find yourself now in terms of, do you have any of the conditions that you were diagnosed with?
So actually, believe it or not, on day 366, I was entirely symptom-free from everything.
Boom.
I was off all medications, and I had a list of medications longer than my arm. I was discharged from care by doctors. They said that I didn't need them anymore. In fact, my cardiologist, who is a top specialist in the country in dysautonomia, asked me if I'd be willing to talk to some of his patients who he thought would be appropriate. He would send them over, and I would talk to them about my journey, about juicing and about healing and how it's possible. So that was really, really cool to hear from a Western medicine doctor that he wanted me to speak to his patients. But I had no mobility devices. When I started eating solid food, I had no problem holding it down and keeping it down. I had no symptoms. I was 100% entirely symptom-free on day 366. So by that time, my body was like, this is it, you did it. Because we think that healing has to be this difficult and complicated thing because what we're experiencing feels difficult and complicated. But really, healing is about shedding all that we are not and fully stepping into all that we are. And during this year, I was shedding so many layers of all the stories who I thought I was and all the traumas and all of the everything that I thought that I was. And we all think that who we are is who we express ourselves as is who we think we are, right? Who we actually are at our core is pure love. And when we tap back into that love and we reconnect back to ourself, physically speaking, the body cannot sustain things that take us out of that love. So for me, during that year and going inside and healing what I needed to heal on the internal plane and really coming back to myself, it was a homecoming. Healing is coming home. And once I came home, right, my body could not sustain the things that it needed to do to bring me back home. Because I believe that everything that I experienced was truly a gift. Every condition that I experienced taught me something else, right? I believe in the mind-body connection entirely. And the fact that I wasn't digesting things on a physical plane was because there are things in my internal world and things that I had experienced and traumas that I had been through that I was not digesting. It was a physical manifestation and that's just one example. It was a physical manifestation of what I was going through internally. And the fact that I was passing out all the time, well, life felt like too much. That was my body's defense mechanism. It was shutting down because I felt like I couldn't handle life. So my body was like, okay, we're gonna take a break. We're gonna take a pause. You're out for the count, right? And the walking thing, I couldn't see myself moving forward in life because of the traumas that I experienced. I was holding myself back. So it manifested physically. So when we understand that connection and we come back to ourselves and we heal, when we remove the fear, first of all, and we look at it from what is this here to teach me? And we allow that healing to happen. We absorb that message and we apply it. We allow that healing to happen. The messages that we're experiencing from these conditions go away on their own because they've served their purpose. We've come back home to ourselves. So once I made it back home, which was by day 366, my body had no more use for these messages. So they went away.
That I'm just sitting here speechless. Oh, wow. We speak the same language, sister, on so many levels. Hebrew, English, and
yes.
the language of love and the magic within us. And so it's, yeah, oh, beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And so true that it's really about coming back to our natural state, as I refer to it. Mm-hmm. And that natural state is one of wholeness and completeness and love. And of course, vitality and supreme health, it all goes hand in hand. And so the process of healing, just like I said earlier, it's not about what we put in, it's about elimination. It's what we release that actually is not who we truly are.
Right.
So when we shed all of that, then what reveals itself is the core, is the essence, like you were saying. So nothing else can actually stick to that. There's no room for anything else. There's no room for anything else to exist.
Exactly. Exactly. It's about shedding all we are not to fully step into all that we are. And all that we are is pure love and magic. And that's the case for everybody. And the coolest thing is we're not the only ones who know this. There are millions of people around the world who are healing themselves this way because it's natural law. It's natural law as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, yeah.
And that and allowing ourselves to believe in that and to apply that makes all the difference in the world.
I feel very compelled to add this. Many people are familiar with the word ahimsa. It's the Hindu word for nonviolence, basically. We've heard about nonviolence, nonviolent communication, just living as a nonviolence with the words, thoughts, actions. And of course, I come from the position of self-love and coming home to yourself, like you said, Sarah. So it's about nonviolent with oneself. And we've all been violent with ourselves. If it's with our words internally, the thoughts that we have about ourselves, and then on a physical plane, how we've abused, neglected, and been violent with our bodies, with food choices, with environmental choices, habits, and whatnot. And nothing is bad. It's just the fact that this is how we've lived. And so going back to ahimsa, nonviolence, the actual meaning of ahimsa. And when I heard that, it brought so many feelings to my body, and it resonated so much that ahimsa doesn't translate exactly to nonviolence, but it actually means to live so fully and utterly in love that there's no room for anything else to exist.
I just got full body chills.
I haven't thought about this, Sarah, in years, because this is like years and years and years and years ago that I heard that, and it stuck with me all this time. And it literally just came when you were speaking. I just heard it so loudly, and applying it now to this conversation, and in the lines of health and true health and regeneration on a cellular level, what we are speaking. Because when you go to the cellular level, the essence of who you are, this light, this brilliant love, and that is ahimsa, to live so fully and utterly in love that there's no room for anything else to exist. So all these tools that we are talking about, and even the year-long juice feast that Sarah embarked on, it's not that the juices healed her per se. It's the fact that they created a space for her to release that which wasn't her truth.
Yes.
On a physical plane, mental and emotional, because it's all connected.
Yes, exactly that. It created, the juice was the exact tool that I needed to go in and do the inner work and to allow these things to heal. The juice didn't do the healing. It was a very, very important part of the journey, as tools are, right? There's a reason that carpenters use hammers instead of their bare fists. But is the hammer building the house, or is it the carpenter?
Amazing. And then when we know that the truth of who we are, that the carpenter is God.
Yeah.
In a physical form. And so God is moving through each and every one of us. And that is the power of healing. So we remove the obstructions on a physical level that actually affect us emotionally and spiritually, and inhibiting our ability to actually see that, experience that, and embody that. So ultimately, the journey and the process of healing and shedding and regenerating is, like Sarah said, it's a homecoming. And where is that home? It's the truth of who you are, which is you are God essence, with the capabilities to heal and to create the most vibrant reality for yourself. Sarah was giving a death sentence, like some of you that are listening to this and will be listening later have as well. Maybe it's not a complete death sentence, but you've been diagnosed. You've put somebody with a white coat, or not no white coat, put a label on you, a diagnosis saying this is what you have now. And so that becomes a story for you that you believe in. And in any given moment, you can say, I don't believe in that anymore because I know who I am. And then we do the things that are going to help you to release that which is no longer who you are, because now you know the truth of who you are.
Yes. I think the coolest thing about all of this is the fact that my story is one of millions, which means that it's not just, it doesn't just work for me. I wasn't just a miraculous miracle, here we go, right? It was a miracle because everything's a miracle. The fact that life exists is a miracle. But it wasn't a miracle in the sense that it's not replicable, because millions of people around the world are doing the same thing, because this is the way that it works. It's not just me. And if it's not just me, well, first of all, even if it was just me, right? If I can do it, anybody else can, because we're all made of the same things. We're all made of the things that make up the stars in the sky. We are limitless. But the fact that it's not just me is further proof that anybody can do this. Anybody can tap into this. This is who we are. It's not something that we just decide and say, okay, I get to, it's who we are. There's no escaping it. There's no avoiding it. And if we choose to accept that about ourselves and choose to take that responsibility, and it is responsibility. It's not about blame, but it's about accepting responsibility for where we are and loving ourselves through that. Once we're ready to do that, magic happens.
Boom. Self-responsibility. That's it. Amazing,
Radical
Sarah.
love, acceptance, and personal responsibility.
Yeah. Yep. Wow. Okay. So I'm guessing that now, and again, going back to Pamela's question in terms of what does maintenance now include? And so I would guess, and Sarah, you're going to share that, as Sarah already said, that after 366 days, she was free of all the things. And also to chime in, Pamela, on that and say that when healing really takes place and regeneration, then there's no more symptoms. If symptoms continue to come back, it just means things haven't been resolved completely. And the 1 year of being on just juice, you get to really, really, really deep layers. So you tell me, Sarah, okay, after 366 days, you were free of the feeding tube, of course, and the mobility devices and other things. But were you experiencing any other symptoms when you started transitioning into solid food? Do you have any symptoms now?
I was not experiencing any symptoms whatsoever when transitioning back to solid food. I didn't have the easiest transition because this was the one case where I did listen to experts instead of listening to my own body.
Mm-hmm.
And it was not an easy or fun transition because of that. I really do believe that's what happened in my situation. But that aside, physical symptoms, no. And okay, here's the thing. Now I'll occasionally get symptoms here and there, not of what I experienced before. So not of any of the things that I was diagnosed with, but if I have symptoms of, let's say, a cold, right? If my nose is congested, if I'm stuffed up, for example, it's because something in my world stinks. So my body's protecting me from smelling it. And once I work through that, once I work through what stinks in my world, right, my nose clears up. And a few weeks ago, I lost my voice. I just woke up one morning and it was gone. And I realized there were a lot of conversations that I needed to be having, that I needed to be important conversations that I was putting off and avoiding. And as soon as I started having those conversations, my voice came back. So I'll have symptoms here and there of my body reminding me of things or letting me know things that was like, hey, hold on, this is something you need to take care of here. And because there's no fear involved, because there's no, because I look at it from a place of curiosity. Oh, hey, body, thanks for bringing this to my attention. What are you trying to teach me here? What do I need to learn? What do I need to do with this? And that's the perspective. As soon as I make those changes, as soon as I understand what the message is saying and make the shifts, the symptom disappears. So small things here and there, which are just reminders of what's going on in the internal world and just, hey, you got to take care of this. I'll have those kinds of symptoms, but nothing to the level that I ever experienced previously.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of maintenance, I meditate daily, at least 20 minutes every day. I live in gratitude. I find a reason to be grateful for everything. It does not matter if it feels good in the moment or not. I know it is for my good. I just have full and complete trust and faith in God and the universe to know that it does not matter what is going on in my world. If it feels good, awful, bad, terrible, scary, it doesn't matter. It's for my good. So thank you. Living in that state is a form of maintenance for me, for my health. I eat a very high fruit-based diet, and I also fast a lot. And for me, fasting is not just a physical practice, but a spiritual one as well. I find it a lot easier to go within when I go without. So sometimes that'll mean a water fast. Sometimes that'll mean a day of juice. Sometimes that'll mean a fast from being online. But I love to go within. So it's a lot easier for me to do so when I go without. So that's another form of maintenance that I practice.
Fantastic. You shared what I wanted to ask in its perfect flow, because Pamela was asking about what kind of fasting you practice. And so Sarah said it's water and the juice sometimes, and you're still high on the juices regardless in your life, correct? Because you genuinely just feel good on the liquids, on the juices.
I genuinely do feel good on the liquids and the juices. Lately, I've been less high on juices and more just on juicy fruits.
Yeah.
I've been really, really crazy this season, mandarin oranges, and they're just in season now here in Israel, and they're delicious. And I could be on Mandarin Orange Island, I feel like, for an entire year. I just love them so much. So I'll go through periods where I'm like very, 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 very much into the juicing and very much into the juices, and periods where it's just like, I just want that juicy fruit in my mouth right now. So again, it's all about listening to my body. And I plan certain days of my week to be fast days because I like structure and I like routine. And typically Sundays are my water fast days, and Mondays I'll do just juice. But this week, Sunday, I really wanted a tomato. So I ate a tomato. And today I feel like I just want water today. So that's what I'm gonna do. I like to have structure, but not to the point where it's limiting. So for me, it's about flowing and feeling, but flowing and feeling within a container that's still allowing me to take care of myself.
Yes, brilliant, Sarah. Yeah, you and I are like two peas in a pod. Like everything you say is like, yep. That's how I live. That's what I share is to have. It's the feminine and the masculine. Is to have the structure that keeps things in place. What you can call, people call it discipline, but I call it devotion. It's being devoted to, because there's a bigger why behind it. You are devoted to this temple. That the body is part of the temple, but we're talking about the temple of your life, and the body is the vehicle that helps us within that space. And so you live in devotion to that. And part of the devotion is, yes, I'm going to fast. I'm going to go on the juices for 90 days or whatever it may be. It's all in the name of devotion and the spirit of devotion. And then within the structure, this devotional structure, you find the flow and allow the flow to move in an organic and natural way. That's just a more of a feminine way of approaching this, rather than like, I'm just going to fast and be very strict and too blind about it. And I know, because I've done it, that was my MO throughout my life. And so I've learned to release that. So I resonate with what you're sharing deeply. Some of the questions here and comments, Rossum, Chrissy, I believe Sarah definitely answered that it's not only that her condition got better from juicing. As we said, it's not from the juicing, but thanks, with the help of the juices, it's not only got better, but it was gone. So she touched on that. And Susie, beloved Susie, saying that, yeah, she's affirming or resonating with the feeling of after dry fasting. Susie is big on that her body knows exactly what juice to have. It's such a beautiful thing to observe once you get more and more in touch and in tune, how the body literally speaks to us And I do want to put a side note on that, because some people say, well, my body is asking pizza and burgers. And it's like, no, that's not your body. that's something completely different. We want to make a distinction between a clean body that is not run by addictions and parasites and emotional patterns of eating, versus a body that is clean, healed, more regenerated, and is connected to the true essence.
Very true.
Yeah, the difference between following a broken GPS and a GPS that is on point, basically.
Very true. And I'll notice that if I'm in a situation that feels hard or feels difficult, I'll still crave old comfort foods. Doesn't mean I'll turn to them, but
Right.
I'll crave them. And I think that's also an important distinction. What do we crave, or what is our body asking for when we feel good? And what is it asking for when we feel bad? And when we feel less than ideal? And if our body's telling us something when we feel less than ideal, is it our body telling us this? Or is it us seeking comfort? And it's okay to seek comfort. We need comfort. Comfort is we have access to comfort for a reason, but it doesn't need to come from that place. It doesn't need to come true comfort doesn't come from a place of self-sabotage or a place of doing more damage. True comfort comes from turning back inwards and sitting with what it is that we need to sit with, and allowing everything else to flow forward.
Yes. Oh my God, there's just so many threads I can start here. But definitely, because we know, Sarah, we've talked about this, you and I, it's ultimately about freedom, right? It's to free ourselves. Like, okay, acknowledge if it's still there, because there's nothing wrong if you still have the cravings, if you still even choose to go to whatever food you know is not the best for you. It's just to observe, to know. And as we already shared, it's about walking yourself back home. We're walking each other home. It's coming back home to ourselves. And once we are home, all those things fall away. Okay, you just don't, it's not in your awareness anymore. And if it is, it doesn't have the power over you. You might have the craving and you're just going to observe, you're just going to see it. You're just going to look at it like, oh, and that's how we start transitioning. That's how we start shifting things, because in the past, the pattern would be to grab it unconsciously. Right. And that can be going on for years. And then you bring awareness and you start realizing, and then you start making new choices. And one step at a time, you free yourself from all these chains.
Yes.
Sovereignty and empowerment.
Yes. It's about curiosity instead of immediately reaching for that thing that brings comfort. It's, oh, why am I feeling like I need comfort right now? Why am I feeling like this is going to bring me that comfort? It's about looking at it and no judgment, just, oh, this is interesting. I'd love to learn. And once we have the mindset of, oh, this is interesting, there's no longer that drive to like grab it and have it now. It's just, oh, curious, cool, okay, now I know. And I notice that when I'm curious and when I ask myself these questions and I get these answers, that thing that once looked so appealing doesn't appeal anymore, because I know where it's coming from and I know what I'm actually asking for, because my body's not actually asking for that thing. It's asking for what that thing represents. And I know that thing isn't going to bring me what it represents. It's just going to give me that thing. And at one point in my life, maybe that thing brought me comfort, right? That thing won't bring comfort anymore. But if I'm reaching for it, or if I feel like I'm being asked for it, or if I'm asking for it, it's, oh, do I want this, or do I want what it means? And I know that I want what it means. And I know that thing no longer means comfort to me anymore. So therefore I don't want it. And let's go find comfort where I know I'll actually find it, which is coming back home to me.
Yes. Boom, boom. Oh, there's just so many things I want to say. Yeah, and it's like creating new associations. It's a big part of what I teach, is creating new associations, especially with these cravings and certain foods. And when there are physical ailments and physical conditions going on, and somebody embarks on a extended juice feasting or some sort of a detoxification, purification journey, is I suggest, I offer this image, and I tell the person, imagine that when you want to grab that piece of whatever, like your house is on fire and you're throwing wood on it.
Mm.
And you start creating new associations because, like you said, the pattern, the habitual pattern is, oh, I see this food or whatever it may be. I associate that with comfort. I associate that with joy, with feeling good, which is not even a true, there's falsehood. It's not, it's a feeling good in the moment,
Right.
but it's actually not aligned with the true vision and the higher vision of that person, which is to be healthy and vital and exuberant and free. And so to start making those new connections in the brain, that, yeah, every time you, even if you did grab it and you ate it, but I want you to eat it, and while you're eating it, you literally seeing yourself throwing wood when your house is on fire and burning. And slowly but surely you're going to start experiencing a new association in which, like, oh, wait a second, I don't want to throw wood on my burning house.
Right. Right.
Yes. So thank you for sharing that. Susie is saying that she has the tangelos now in season, and that's all her body wants. Yay.
Totally understand.
Yeah, they're amazing. The tangelos there in Hawaii are phenomenal.
Yes.
Just going through some of the questions, and we're going to start wrapping things up. And Sarah, we're going to have more of these for sure.
I would love that.
Yeah, so Susie's asking if Sarah had any physical things that changed, like eye color. Did you notice that?
My eyes did get brighter.
Of course.
My eyes always swung from between blue and green. And it was typically based, and sometimes a little bit of gray. And it really depended. Typically, it was based on what I was wearing. Now, I've noticed that the better I feel internally, and not just physically, but the more, the higher vibe I feel in my day to day, the brighter my eyes are. And if I am not up on my self-care, if I'm not taking care of myself the way that I would ideally like to be taking care of myself, my eyes get a little bit more dull. And when I have a beautiful conversation with somebody that like sparks joy inside, my eyes get bright again and a lighter blue. So I can really judge how I'm doing internally based on my eye color. If I'm feeling disconnected from myself a little bit, or I'm just not being super observant, that's just one of the pathways I have to be like, hold on a second, let me look in the mirror, see where my eyes are at today. It'll give me a gauge, and like, let's step up if my eyes are a little bit more green than blue, let's step up that meditation, or let's eat a little bit more fruit. And it's, so yeah, for me, eye color has definitely changed. My hair also changed. During my year-long juice feast, I ended up doing the big chop. I had hair that I was long enough that I could almost sit on it. And I ended up getting a pixie cut during that year. And it grew back in curly. And I'd never had curly hair before. All these curls at the bottom, they're just natural. And also the blonde in my hair is natural. It was bleached from the sun, and that has never happened to me before. I'm not in a place with sun right now, so it's pretty dark. But all these different things, yeah, these are all physical things that I noticed. I also noticed that this is actually a really cool one. When I was in Hawaii, I had a really bad sunburn when I first got there on my shoulders, and it was pretty intense. And everyone's like, you should get treatment for that, this, that, and the other. Like, my body's gonna heal. It's gonna heal naturally, and obviously it did. And then I decided from then on out, I'm not gonna burn anymore. I just decided my body's gonna take exactly what it needs from the sun. It's gonna release the rest, and I'm not gonna burn. And from then on out, didn't burn. I've not gotten a sunburn since, and I lived outside pretty much all day, every day. So just having that, so being able to speak something into existence and having it affect the physical plane had never happened to me beforehand. That's something that's happened after coming home.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Aho. Susie saying that her hair grew back curly too after she lost it during illness. And actually, Dr. Morris, sorry, are you familiar with Dr. Morris, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so he speaks about that healthy hair of humans, because a lot of things that we see now that we think, oh, it's normal, this is how things are, like even with the eye color, there's only blue and brown. So your true eye color, Sarah, is blue. And so with the healing, the more you heal, the more of the blue you're going to see. My eyes are truly blue. And I've seen them change dramatically from they were a lot darker, or they're now starting to become more of the hazel green. And maybe, well, not even maybe, one day in this life, I will see the blue again in my eyes. But Dr. Moore speaks about the hair, that the human hair, that when it's really healthy and vibrant of a healthy body, is naturally wavy and curly. When you see the flat, straight like that, that is not healthy hair. And right, we've been accustomed to, like, even women that straighten their hair, because there's the image of this like straight hair is beautiful or whatnot. And it's not about the beauty or not beautiful or not beautiful, but it's, you're not the first one. And I've observed it with myself and people that I work with, that the hair does get its natural waviness naturally. You don't need to do anything to it. And there's no frizz, there's no nothing. It's just naturally beautiful and healthy and has this waviness to it.
I did not know that.
Mm-hmm.
There's something new. That's so cool. That definitely explains it in my case, because I went from having pretty much pin straight hair to curls, and it just does it on its own. I had no idea why or what, and I was thrilled to see it happening, because I'd always wanted curly hair. I was like, oh, this is really, really cool. I did the big chop and I have curly hair, but I guess because I was cleaning myself out on all levels, my hair just grew back in a way that agreed with what I was doing.
Yeah, because it's a healthy tissue. That's the process of regeneration. It's like during detox, during purification, we demolish the old. Things don't look good in the process. And then once we bring it back to life, to its vibrancy, then it's like, wow, you see the true vibrancy and the health of the tissue coming through everything, the fingernails, the hair, the eyes, the skin. It's amazing. And this is also to answer your question, Chrissy, because she was asking if the juicing helped with the loose joints, and how does juicing help the body to tighten up the loose joints and rebuild the connective tissue. So like we've already discussed, is that it's not necessarily the juice that does that. Nothing external is going to do anything to you. It's the fact that the juicing helps the body to create an environment that the body can regenerate itself. And so the juicing, basically what you're doing is, well, a lot of things. It's a hydration to the body. There's a flood of electrolytes. There's a flood of life force that comes through. There's the digestive system that you are healing, which is the main cause for pretty much every single illness, every single symptom that we have on the list. And so when you remove everything else and you give your body such a break, and in Sarah's case, it was a full year, but all the body did was focusing all of its energy on healing the tissue, because the body is intelligent and smart. You don't need to do anything. It knows how to do it. You just need to get out of the way. And so Sarah got out of the freaking way for a whole year, and her body was on point. It said, okay, we're going in. And it had the energy to focus on what needed to be healed. And so it did that, including the loose joints, anything that was weak and needed restoration and regeneration. That's the power that we are talking about.
Yes. And we know through the study of epigenetics that what we consume affects us on a cellular and DNA level. We also have started to understand and started to learn that our emotions do the same thing. So when we're living in states of high vibrations of love and of gratitude, that also impacts on a cellular level. And when we come back to home to ourselves through healing, those are the states that we naturally live at. We're naturally on the frequency of love. We're naturally designed to be in the frequency of gratitude. So coming back to those states also impacts us on that DNA cellular level, which allows for the continued healing and the complete healing, to where it doesn't, I wouldn't say that it doesn't matter, but if there is a day where we consume something less than ideal, it's not going to set us back, in the sense that it's not saying like go back to old patterns and old beliefs, because that just takes us out of ourself, but it's saying that we're okay, we're good. Um, so I would say that emotions also play a really huge role, and living in those higher states, and because that's where we're designed to live. So really, once we come home to ourselves, and that manifests in the way that we take care of our physical plane and our internal plane, healing just happens.
100%. 100%. And what I've observed is also that it's very true, because, people ask, well, what if I ate this? Is that going to like ruin everything? And what Sarah is saying is very true, is that we are powerful creators, and emotionally and mentally, well, it's important to focus on the emotional plane and the mental plane as well. And to also realize that at some point, because Sarah was talking about the vibration, right? And it's what we resonate with, that once you're in this process of purifying and regenerating and strengthening the body and coming home, then you're just not going to resonate with certain things. So it's not even a matter of, do I eat it, or do I want to eat it? Do I don't want to eat it? Do I eat it? Or getting out of your head about all of this, because it's all falsehood, really. Once you are at a certain vibration, you can say, and it's not about higher or lower or bad or good, but certain things are just not going to resonate with you anymore. That's why I'm a big proponent of letting this process be a natural thing.
Yes.
Staying focused, like, yeah, I'm going to do 90 days on juice, or yes, I'm going to do a year on juice. Like, do whatever is necessary, whatever is God nudging you to do. Like, you got to get your health back in order to experience these higher planes also, because everything is connected. When your endocrine system is not functioning, or is shut down, or is not strong, there's a limit to even how much of the spiritual plane you can access. So in the process that's why the healing process is not just a physical thing, never. It's always a combination of all of these elements, and not one is not more important than the other. Just like we've been sharing, and Sarah said, the emotional plane. A lot of people focus so much on how much juice to drink, or how long am I going to do the juice feast, but they don't really look at those emotional components. And so things may remain stuck. Right? So the bravery to go in and come home to yourself, like Sarah said.
Wow.
So beautiful, Sarah. Anything else? And guys here on those that are on the video now and the live, if you have any other questions or things you would like to share with Sarah, then please type it in the comments now. And and Chrissy asking, yes, Chrissy, and regarding to the herbs and the endocrine and adrenals help while juicing. Again, if that wasn't Sarah's journey, she just didn't feel drawn to the herbs. And that's a big piece of what we are sharing here, is to really listen to oneself. When I guide people, then I do recommend herbs, in particular for the endocrine system and the adrenals, but it doesn't mean that every person needs that, meaning that they might have a different access point. So to not see things in such black and white, if you feel drawn to herbs and you want to incorporate that into your journey, then I highly recommend herbs for the endocrine system and the adrenals in particular, especially for the majority of people in our world these days. Susie saying that she's truly grateful for us coming together, soul sisters. Yes, Susie. Yes, and I see that soon enough, the three of us will sit somewhere and enjoy some juicy fruits and juice and durian and sing Kumbaya.
Amen.
Chrissy saying, but when you are 55, Chrissy, age has nothing to do with it. That's another box that you're putting yourself in. It doesn't matter if you're 55, 105, or 15. You have your own body's intelligence, and if you feel drawn to the herbs, by all means, then of course I recommend them highly. Susie is 49. But Susie, you have used herbs, like you a big proponent of Dr. Morris's herbs. So that's what Christy was referring to, that when you are 55, that you might need the herbs more to recover. That after all, Sarah was in her 20s when she embarked on that massive healing process. So yeah, we can say that, yes, there's something to be said about age. However, and I believe, Sarah, you would agree with me, is it really, it's the mind more than anything else. So don't 100%. Limit yourself because of the number, the age.
100%. And just to be clear, I'm not against herbs. I think if someone is drawn to them, that's a beautiful thing. I just personally wasn't drawn to them. And I was not about to do something that I wasn't drawn to. I tried it. I gave it a solid week, and I wasn't drawn to it. So I was asking myself, why am I doing something? My whole journey has been about me listening to my body and going with what my body wants. Why am I listening now to my mind? So again, I'm all for herbs for whoever feels drawn to them. I don't care if you feel like you need to stand on your head and clap at 7:03 every single day. If that's what you believe will heal you, I'll be the first one to set that alarm for you and help you get on your head, right? I don't care what you choose to do to heal, whatever you're drawn to. If it's going to bring you that healing, then yes, go for it. Your journey is entirely you. For me, though, herbs just didn't speak to me, and I think that's also okay. I just left more herbs for everybody else. No.
Right. And there's different things that work at different time. Like, who knows, maybe for Sarah, a year from now, that there's something about the herbs that will come into her life, and it's
right.
I was using herbs for a very long time, and now it's less. So it's just like really feeling into it. Coming back home. Remember, my friends here, don't get caught up in the mind. There's a lot of mind stuff that I share, for sure. A lot of information from my experience and everything that I teach that is based on practical information. There's room for that, but to not get locked in that only, because that's going to limit you to some degree. So it's the mix of the art with the science, and the art is the art of self-listening, of coming home to self, to really trust yourself, which brings me to Pamela's comment here. Pamela, I was feeling you, actually. She said that she just received a horrible diagnosis from Western medicine doctor, and that this testimony has been a godsend, and it has given me a brand new level of tenacity and strength. A complete mind shift and healing is downloading. So yes, because Pamela she completed 2 30-day solid vacation. She's about to embark on a 90-day one. And yeah, I've been feeling you, Pamela. I had a feeling that something was going on there, and we're going to talk. We're going to have our one-on-one next week. So we'll talk more, because I've got some things to say about that. But however, I'm really happy that you tuned in to this conversation today, because Sarah's story is indeed remarkable. So thank you for coming here and for being here, Pamela, and for downloading everything that is being downloaded to you and through you right now. God bless. Christy is saying, very inspiring, Sarah. Yes. I have started my juice feasting January 1st to heal. Yes, Christy, hooray. So she's saying, thank you both. I also feel emotional is a very big part of the healing too. Yes. Great, Chrissy. Keep on going, dear one. Susie saying, my mom was a nurse, and she has said the doctors have a script they tell everyone. Don't believe it, Pamela. Pamela knows, Susie. Pamela knows, yes. Thank you for sharing that, though, Susie. Thank you for chiming in on that one. Perfection. So beloved Sarah, or closing words that you feel inspired to share now.
Just a reminder that healing happens, and my story is one of millions, which means that it's not just me, which means anyone can do it, which means you can do it. You are the magic. You are made of the same things that make up the stars in the sky. And billions of things had to align exactly perfectly in order for you to exist right here, right now. And the chances of that happening are so small. Statistically speaking, you should not exist. None of us should. And yet here you are. So for all that work to come together to bring you to this physical plane in this very moment, does it make sense that you're here to suffer? No. You will heal and you will thrive. You're the magic.
And so it is.
Oh.
Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today, for sharing yourself and your wisdom. It's been an absolute delight and a pleasure. More to come. Say it in the comments who wants to have Sarah here more. And if you're watching this later in the group or on YouTube, then please leave your comments. If you have any questions for myself or for Sarah, or anything related to what we shared here today, then please leave that in the comments here in the group or on YouTube. Yes, and I'll come back to it. Chrissy saying yes more, Pamela saying yes, and her mom
Yes.
We'll coordinate mom and Sarah. Yes, so stay tuned, dear friends. Thank you for coming here today and being live. Yeah, Melissa is saying yes, your mom too. So we have, yeah, your mom is up next. You can already prepare her.
Yes.
Fantastic. Yes. So yeah, thank you so much for all of you that stayed here with us this whole time on the live. Thank you for those of you that are tuning in later, leaving your comments and your love and your appreciation and your questions. God bless all of you. Continue to shine, continue to thrive, continue to know that you are the magic. Stay devoted to your healing process, to your regeneration, and know that anything is possible.
Amen. Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute honor and a pleasure. And thank you. I'm just so grateful.
We are all grateful for you, Sarah. Thank you so much. Have a gorgeous day there.
Thank you.
In Jerusalem, and everybody else have a beautiful night, wherever you may be, and sending you so much love. We'll see you soon.